Hey, good morning, guys. Yes, I apologize on the first video I posted for some reason. Um, there was no sound. Actually, it was from, I guess, my computer. For some reason, the sound was on mute. So the first video I recorded had no sound. Should have listened to it, but anyway, regardless, I guess here we go again. I'll record another video. Um, Sorry, I just got an email early this morning, and when I checked it, I guess thanks to Professor Smith for alerting me that there was no sound. And then the question again is, what is rural social work? How would you explain rural social work? Um, Make sure to describe rural social work and behavior at the micro, meso, and macro levels of practice. Provide examples. Um, I guess the author daily mentioned in the first page, or I think which was page 3, um, that rural social work has been in existence for over a century, and that despite America and other Northern American countries becoming more urbanized, there's still millions of people that live in rural areas. And these people experience many difficulties and a lot of like these difficulties and usually not acknowledged because people have some sort of false beliefs that people living in rural areas have it easy, it's serene, and life is pretty easy. And then on page 3, again, pardon me with some of these pages with the way it looks digitally. Some of these pages, I'm not sure if they're exact, but this per, between pages 3 to 5, there's a quote in the book from Ginsberg trying to define rural social work. It says, per, perhaps the first important principle is that social work with rural populations and in rural areas is ideally simply good social work that reflects and considers the environment in which practice takes place. Um, that particular definition leans towards rural social work having to do like with a specific geographic location, a rural, let's consider a rural area. However, throughout that first chapter, uh, there are many instances where Daly argues that it's difficult to solely define rural areas based on geographic location because which now more is the macro. Again, micro is individual, meso, groups, families, and then macro with communities. And then it's difficult to define rural social work based on just that geographic location because you have rural people migrating in and out of their communities willingly and unwillingly to urban areas. And then if one has to administer social work to rural people, which are often referred in this text as country people, one has to administer social work to them outside of their areas. It's still rural social work, although it's happening outside of the context of a geographic location that's considered rural. Um, and then also in the text, in terms of micro and meso levels, the authors define how rural people have willingly and unwillingly migrated to urban areas. And then this is mostly seen on pages 5, 6, and 7. Therefore, social work is practice rural social work even outside of rural communities. On the other hand, rural social work can be practiced at the macro level in geographical settings. So um, now looking at that geographical setting of um, rural areas, which is the macro, yes, still this rural area still exists going by that definition of rural social work. So um, social workers are practicing social work in their community on the macro level. And then going back again to the micro and the meso. So when um, people migrate from rural areas to, um, I guess, urban areas, a lot of times people would live in the most affordable areas um, in the urban areas that they've migrated to, and then usually because people from rural areas value um, their families, um, they often would live in communities that they are close to each other. Just like, for example, maybe when they were in their own communities, they're living um, close to family members and close contact with them, sometimes even neighbors. In the same way, they're reproducing the same thing when they migrate um, to urban areas. I mean, obviously, it makes it easier to adjust. You live in more affordable areas, but then you're still building that sense of community outside of your area. And then also on the macro level and also micro and the meso, one has to understand like the value that people from rural areas, the value they place on like their land, and sometimes it's due to historical trauma, um, and just for several other reasons that people attach to their land, and then how like that value makes meaning out of their lives, and how um, one has to understand those important values, and then also helping in build which will help one build rapport people. So understanding the importance of land and family at the micro, meso, and the macro level, and being culturally educated, sensitive, and being open to um, ideas shared um, by community members, individuals, groups, and families helps one to be culturally sensitive, and then also, I guess, at the same time, too, one can try to research, um, to be educated at the same time about some of those values in rural areas. I apologize once again, for my video being long. It was because of the technical issues. Thank you all.